August 20th, 2022, Leon Edwards shocked the entire MMA world. With less than a minute left, clearly down on the scorecards, he knocked out one of the most dominant champions in UFC history with a perfectly timed head kick, creating one of the most unforgettable moments the sport of MMA has ever seen. But what makes Leon Edwards' career so strange is what happened after that moment, because the fighter who knocked out Kamaru Usman looked like he might rule the welterweight division for years. And yet today, many fans believe his career may already be over. The man he knocked out was the notorious welterweight champion, the Nigerian nightmare, Kamaru Usman. And at this time, Usman looked unbeatable. By this point, he already defended the welterweight belt 5 times. He had dominated some of the best fighters in the world and looked like a champion who might rule the division for years. Before becoming champion, Usman defeated Demian Maia and Rafael dos Anjos. He then fought Tyrone Woodley for the welterweight belt and dominated him for 5 rounds. His title defenses included Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal twice, and Colby Covington twice in brutal fights. Some fans were even beginning to ask whether Usman might eventually challenge George St. Pierre as the greatest welterweight we have ever seen. It was hard to see how anyone could beat Kamaru Usman. Meanwhile, Leon Rocky Edwards had quietly been climbing the welterweight division. He wasn't loud, he wasn't a big trash talker, and he never had the personality that usually attracts huge attention in the sport. But inside the cage, he was extremely skilled. Leon had built a reputation as one of the most technically sound fighters in the division. His striking was sharp, his clinch game was excellent, and he was very good at controlling distance. And over time, the wins started stacking up. He defeated fighters like Vicente Luque, Donald Cerrone, Gunnar Nelson, and Rafael dos Anjos. Quietly, Edwards built a 10-fight unbeaten streak, one of the longest runs in the welterweight division. But despite that streak, he still felt overlooked. So when Leon Edwards finally stepped into the octagon to challenge Usman for the belt, very few people believed he could actually win. And there was another reason for that. These two men had fought before. Back in 2015, early in both of their UFC careers, Kamaru Usman defeated Leon Edwards by unanimous decision. Usman controlled the fight with wrestling and pressure, and it seemed like a clear stylistic advantage. So when they met again, years later, with the belt on the line, most fans expected the same result. And for most of the fight, these predictions looked correct. Usman pressured Leon constantly. He controlled the clinch exchanges, mixed in takedowns, and slowly broke Edwards down round after round. Heading into the final minute of the 5th round, Leon Edwards was losing clearly on the scorecards. It looked like history was repeating itself, and with 1 minute left, it looked like the fight was already over. Then, everything changed. Listening to his corner, Leon feinted the jab. He stepped forward and threw a perfectly timed head kick. The kick landed clean on Usman's temple and knocked him out cold. The arena exploded, the commentators lost their minds, and Leon Edwards had just produced one of the greatest comeback knockouts in MMA history. Leon Edwards was now the welterweight champion of the world. But the story didn't end there. Some fans believe the knockout was lucky, considering he was clearly on his way to losing a decision up until that last minute head kick. A rematch was booked, and many people believed that Usman would just walk through Leon and reclaim his belt. But instead, in an arguably even more impressive performance, Leon Edwards proved that the win was no fluke. In their trilogy fight, Edwards fought a far more controlled and disciplined fight. He managed the distance well, he defended the takedowns and landed the cleaner strikes across the 5 rounds. And by the end of the fight, Edwards had clearly won the decision and successfully defended his title. The man who shocked the world had now beaten Kamaru Usman twice. Next came along another dangerous challenger, Colby Covington. Covington had already fought Usman twice in extremely competitive fights and was known for his relentless pressure and non-stop wrestling pace. Many people believed his style could give Leon Edwards serious problems. But when the fight happened, Leon stayed calm and composed. He controlled the striking exchanges, defended most of the takedowns, and shut down Covington's offense for long stretches of the fight. By the time the judges' scorecards were read, Leon Edwards had defended his title for a second time, and at that moment it looked like the welterweight division truly belonged to him. But as we know in MMA, everything can change with the wrong matchup. And for Leon Edwards, That turned out to be Bilal Muhammad. Their first fight had ended in controversy after an accidental eye poke forced the fight to stop early. But because of that ending, this rematch carried a lot of tension. Many fans expected Leon Edwards to prove he was clearly the better fighter, given his recent performances, but instead Bilal Muhammad approached the fight with a completely different strategy. He pushed the pace constantly, he pressured Edwards against the cage, and he mixed in relentless wrestling attempts. Round after round, Bilal forced Leon to fight moving backward. The striking exchanges were closer than many people expected, but the constant wrestling pressure made it difficult for Edwards to control the fight the way he usually does. And for the first time since becoming champion, Leon Edwards looked uncomfortable, and he lost a clear, unanimous decision. His run was over. After losing the belt to Bilal Muhammad, Leon Edwards suddenly found himself in unfamiliar territory. For years, Edwards had been one of the most consistent fighters in the welterweight division. He had built a long win streak, he had shocked the world by knocking out Kamaru Usman, he had defended the belt twice, but the loss to Bilal changed everything. But even after losing the title, many fans believed Edwards could bounce back, and the next opportunity to do exactly that came against Sean Brady. Brady was one of the most physically imposing grapplers in the division, a powerful wrestler with dangerous jiu-jitsu and relentless pressure style. On paper, it was a difficult matchup, but it was also the type of fight where Edwards could prove that the loss to Bilal had simply been a setback. But instead, many of the same problems started to appear again. Brady pressured Edwards constantly. He closed the distance, forced clinch exchanges, and repeatedly disrupted Edwards' striking rhythm. Instead of the confident striker who had once knocked out Kamaru Usman, Edwards sometimes looked hesitant. He spent long stretches defending pressure and trying to reset the distance rather than dictating the fight himself. For fans who remember the champion version of Leon Edwards, the fighter who had beaten Usman twice and outclassed Colby Covington, the difference was noticeable. The control he once had over fights seemed to be slipping. Sean Brady submitted Leon via a guillotine choke in the 4th round. Leon had lost again. The man who was once at the very top of the division had now lost 2 fights back to back, and the result only deepened the questions that were surrounding his career. Then came along another dangerous matchup, this time against the explosive striker Carlos Prates. By this point, the narrative around Leon Edwards had already started to shift. What once looked like the beginning of a dominant championship run now looked like a fighter trying to stop a difficult losing streak. And when Edwards stepped into that cage with Prates, the danger was obvious. Prates had built up his reputation on knockout power. One clean shot could change everything, and this time it did. Prates caught Edwards clean. A perfectly timed strike landed flush, and Leon Edwards was knocked out cold. Just like that. The same man who had once delivered one of the greatest knockouts in UFC history, who had built up an immense win streak, beat some of the greats, was now on the receiving end of a devastating finish. And suddenly, the picture of Leon Edwards' career looked very different. 3 fights, 3 losses. It was a shocking fall for someone who had only recently been champion of the world. So what actually happened? Some people believe it's simply a stylistic problem. Pressure wrestlers seem able to disrupt Edwards' rhythm and prevent him from using the precise striking that made him so dangerous during his championship run. Others believe that inactivity played a role. During parts of his time as champion, Edwards fought far less often than many of the contenders chasing the belt. Long layoffs can make it difficult for fighters to maintain momentum. And then there's the mental side of the sport. When a fighter reaches the top of the mountain and then loses the belt, the psychological impact can be enormous. Confidence is one of the most important weapons in MMA, and when it disappears, even the most skilled fighters in the world can suddenly look like completely different athletes. It's a brutal fall for someone who not long ago sat at the very top of this division. And the reality is, the welterweight division might be even more competitive now than it ever has been. You got fighters like Islam Makhachev, Jack Della Maddalena, Michael Morales, Ian Machado Gary, and a new generation of contenders constantly climbing the rankings. The margin for error at 170 pounds is almost non-existent. 1 or 2 bad performances can change everything. And right now, Leon Edwards finds himself in a position that once seemed impossible. No longer the champion, no longer the clear contender, just another fighter trying to survive in one of the most stacked divisions in the UFC. So the question now isn't whether Leon Edwards was great, because at his best, he absolutely was. The question is, what comes next? Does he try to rebuild and climb back into the rankings? Or has the sport already moved on? Because in MMA, sometimes a fighter's greatest moment ends up defining their entire career. And for Leon Edwards, that head kick against Kamaru Usman might be exactly that. So, what do you think? Is this the end of Leon Edwards' run at the top of the welterweight division? Or should he consider walking away from the sport altogether?